everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode as the West is the Best. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Dave Schramm. He is a family life state extension specialist for Utah State University. Thank you so much. Your resume is quite impressive. Thank you so much for joining us. We're pretty honored to have you as a guest today. We also have Megan and Alan and myself, Marcella, and we're going to go through a couple different topics related to monkeys and being mindful in addition to being in the moment. It's going to be a live discussion. I'm pretty excited for our topic, and it's something that came from an idea of Alan. So I will turn it over and have him give us a little bit more background.
Thank you. Yeah, and Dr. Dave, thank you for joining us today. We're going to jump off on this article that was actually introduced to me by Dave Francis of Utah 4-H. It was a conversation we had at a national 4-H meeting a few years back, and it was such a unique illustration that I'd never really heard of before, where it's this Harvard Business Review article. It's the title of it, for those of you who are listening, it's called Management Time, Who's Got the Monkey? This was written in the 70s and has actually been republished a handful of times afterward, being one of their most popular pieces. And even though it was written in the 70s, the principles that introduced of just empowering employees or empowering others was really revolutionary and a new way of thinking that is really continued on today. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about this because we feel like it's, in extension, it's really, time is such a precious resource. And so we, and with the way that we can look at managing our time, where there's these different monkeys that we have to care for and feed and make sure that they are getting the attention that they need. Just wanted to open it up to you and your first reactions to the article and what your thoughts are.
Yeah. Thanks so much, friends, first for having me on. I'm excited for our discussion today. You're right, Alan. There's extension. We go year round, right? Things don't slow down in the summer or any. We are always cruising, and it feels like there's always something on our minds. It doesn't ever feel. I don't know about you guys. It doesn't ever feel like we're actually caught up. It feels like there's always something else coming that our minds are worrying about, and then come the monkeys, right? These monkeys, or I love the article as well. These monkeys are an intern or a colleague comes up and says, "Hey, we've got this, or we've got a struggle here. We've got a situation that we need to have handled," and it's almost like them giving you the monkey and say, "Okay, now you need to take care of it." There, Alan, and then if someone else comes and says, "Oh man, we've got emergency," or "Hey, you need to be sure to," or "I'm not sure what to do in this situation. Will you make this phone call, or will you get back with this parent who was complaining?" And then it's them handing them another monkey on your back. And pretty soon we're consumed with our time of feeding and taking care of these monkeys, or putting out fires is another way of talking about this. And we really can. We could be so consumed by the end of the day. We can think, what have I done? Have I got anything accomplished that I needed to get accomplished? Or was I simply feeding all of these other monkeys and taking care of them? So I love that. The big picture is giving the monkey back and saying, "Hey, oh man, that sounds really tough. A situation. What do you think we should do?" And kind of give that monkey back for them to feed and to take care of, instead of you just assuming, "Oh yeah, okay, let me give them a call. Oh yeah, I'll get back with that parent," or "Yeah, I got to get that meeting scheduled." Really being able to use our time wisely and manage the many people and the struggles and situations in better ways.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. It's so important that there is that realization that when you are saying yes to something, you might be saying no to something else, and you're just taking on more aspects of your already limited time as an extension professional. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because that's just something that is the reality. I think what's unique about extension is that we operate like a profit organization in many ways, where there's just always going to be a need. There's always going to be public that we need to serve and people to engage. And so you do have to be careful on what you're focusing your time on. And this idea of thinking of things as monkeys or putting out fires. I've also heard, you're carrying the ball across the field. There's a few different illustrations that you can think of it. And it's so important just to be intentional about when someone is approaching you with a need, that you are thinking of that actively in the moment. And when we say care and feeding of monkeys, a monkey could be a program. It could be like you were saying, like there's a situation with a volunteer. There might be other things where it just requires time. And there's some monkeys that are these awesome brand new idea monkeys that are innovative and might take a lot of upfront time. Or there's these traditional monkeys that have always been around. They're really cute and beautiful. Or there's these really decrepit monkeys that are only serving a handful of people, but is something that's someone's personal passion project. And you really have to decide on where you're going to be feeding and caring these monkeys. I really wanted to ask, how do you make the decisions of how to make those priorities, on where you're going to finish, where you're going to focus your time, because in extension, they're just our menu is huge, of all the different things we could focus on, but we can only focus on a few things at a time.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because they're all good things. It feels like that there's an extension. We're here, we're passionate, we want to make a difference. We want to help people and situations, make lives better for people. And so it's not always like a burden. We can actually be caught up in lots of good things, choosing between good and gooder, some people say, right? These many good things that we have. Let me give you an example. I was an extension specialist, family life specialist at University of Missouri for 9 years before coming here to Utah State. I've been here now for 6 years. And there I was kind of caught in the race of trying to get tenure and trying to just, climb that ladder and do as much as I could. And so I would apply for almost every grant, any contract, any situation. Hey, Dr. Dave, let's apply for this. I would just say yes to everything. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. And then another one, okay, yeah, let's do this. And oh man, a big federal one came out. We've got to apply for, yes, we do. And so I was applying and then receiving at one point 7 different grants. And I was going crazy. And it was really difficult, not only for me and the stress, but what happened is it was spilling over into our marriage. We have 4 kiddos.
Yep.
At home, and it was really consuming me, and it wasn't fun anymore. It was more demanding. It was even applying for grants that I didn't maybe have the expertise, I wasn't passionate about, but man, you got to apply, you got to bring in dollars, and there's this pressure, both internal and external, to do some of that. I had to learn how to say no and learn how to slow down. So when I came to Utah State and left all those monkeys really there, great things, I came and said, I have to be more mindful, more intentional about what I chase. And I want to do, I'm at a point now in my career where I want to do those things that I want to do, that I'm really passionate about, and be driven both internally instead of externally by all these things that glitter out there. I don't need to chase those things. I really want to put my time, my talents, my efforts and strengths into something that I'm really passionate about. So I can wake up and come to work energized instead of, dreading another project that I shouldn't have got involved in, that's now taking on a life of its own. I don't know if that sounds familiar to any of you guys, but yeah, I kind of learned the hard way.
I appreciate that perspective. So a little bit of background as far as how we connected with Dr. Dave. So I got to see him at our National Volunteer Conference, happened a couple weeks ago, and Alan actually seen him, you said at a statewide.
Yeah, we had our statewide Oregon 4-H training that you came and gave a talk, and it was awesome.
And hitting on those principles, definitely, we actually just connected with a podcast this previous episode, was looking at the stages of an extension professional. And definitely, like, you went through the whole dynamic of part of our discussion. But our takeaway from your presentation at the volunteer conference for me was really just how we reorganize everything and making sure that we are in the moment and we are connecting, and it is meaningful, because extension, that's what we do. We connect with people, we help improve lives overall, and we forget that, hold on, we have to make sure that we're teaching and being and role modeling for ourselves before we can transition over. And that's definitely part of it. You spoke a little bit about searching inwards, and I think that's where a part of the connection of being mindful of those monkeys and what to accept and how you transition into responsibilities of extension, because we have our job descriptions, but there's also that underplate line of duties as assigned. So that's the other part of saying yes or saying no and having those transitions and really becoming mindful. A lot of extension activities right now are full stream in summer. And our hope is to kind of shine light on that. You brought up a article really talking about being in the moment and being living in the moment and living the moment. And can we talk a little bit more about that and explore that topic? Because it really comes back to reflecting to what we do and how we spend our time.
Yeah, absolutely. So the author talks about the importance of not only, slowing down, which we don't even know what that means in extension, right? I'm still trying to figure that out, of slowing down. He talks about living in the moment. He says this is really important to be able to savor that wherever you are, be there, be present in the moment. Because research shows that 40% of the time when we're engaged in activity, we're thinking about something other than what we are actually doing. And so living in the moment, whether I'm at work and I'm working on a task, be all in. If I'm at home and watching my son's football game, be all in, not on my phone or anything, be present instead of multitasking and doing all these other things. Wherever you're at, be there, all in, and live and treasure and savor the moment. And then he actually tweaks it. And then he says it's also important to live the moment instead of live in the moment. He says both are important, but live the moment, he says, is more about being there, but being there for others as well. So being present, but then just noticing, being aware of not only of the moment, but of others in a situation, maybe holding a door open for someone, or someone is struggling or looking for a way to turn outward is how I call it, searching inward. What are my strengths? Turn outward. How can I use those in meaningful ways to help others? A wise colleague early on, Wally Goddard, he's a good friend, former extension specialist who retired. He said early on, Dave, you need to learn early on whether you're going to write and publish and do all these programs to bless or to impress. And I thought, oh man, that was a big wow moment for me back then. It was this, wow, yeah, who am I doing all this for? Is it for me, so I can become bigger or better, or am I doing this for a higher reason, a higher cause? And that's more live the moment. Is who can I serve? Who can I help? And there'll be a name or a face that will come into mind. Now, taken to the extreme, this can take us off, and that's all we would be doing is helping and serving, and then we can get caught in the monkey trap. And so it's this balance. A wise friend, he once said this. He said, Dave, in life, you're going to be juggling all kinds of responsibilities and balls. And he think of these as balls that you're juggling in the air. And then he said that some of these balls are made of rubber and some of them are made of glass. And then he paused and he looked down the barrel. He looked me in the eyes and he said, and I'll never forget it. He said, don't drop the glass balls. And that was a powerful moment for me as well, realizing, for me, that's my marriage, that's my family. Those are the things that are really, really important to me that I can't drop. Some of the rubber balls are going to bounce back up and I can kind of, drop one of those balls once in a while. But that was really powerful, being able to work-life balance all of this. But yeah, coming back, being with who you are in the moment, savoring that, treasuring that, giving our arms around our loved ones and just take a deep breath and just be there. And you could even say out loud in your mind, right? Like, life is good right now. Life is great.
Thank you for mentioning that analogy. I really love what you were just saying about, what your friend told you about the rubber balls and the glass balls, and determining for yourself what those are. And I think another thing you said earlier that really struck me, being at different points in the career, we in 4-H, we have a huge influx of new professionals joining the forces, so to say, and having, in that new position, like you were mentioning earlier, like you feeling like you need to find your niche and impress and get if you're in a position that you're getting promotion and tenure, you're trying to get there, or, just to keep your job, you need to get the numbers up, or, but I want to ask, for our listeners who are new 4-H professionals, what is your advice to determining the difference between, okay, this really is a rubber ball, it's going to be okay, versus, okay, this is a glass ball, you need to keep this together? Like, how do, as a newbie, as a brand new, getting into the role, how do you make that difference? How do you determine how to prioritize and figure out what you need to focus on?
Yeah, that's $1 million question, Alan. I'm glad that you asked that. I think let me draw on a couple of examples. When I was at University of Missouri, I sent out a survey. It was the shortest survey I've ever sent out. It's just 2 questions, and I had over 500 responses. Then it kind of snowballed all across the U.S. And it was simply this: I asked, first question, to me, life is all about, and then I just had a blank. I said, fill in the blank with whatever word, or 1 or 2 words, not a sentence or anything, but just 1 or 2 words. To me, life is all about, and then blank. And then the second question, it was somewhat related. And it was, if I died tomorrow, what I would miss the very most would be, and then fill in the blank. It was interesting as I looked at that. And as you can imagine, 86% in that first question, to me, life is all about, 86% says something about family, something about relationships, something about people. The second question, it was really interesting. It was kind of all over that family and things. If I died tomorrow, what I would miss. Some people actually said things like Chick-fil-A. And another person said my cows. I was like, oh, there's a 4-H'er, right? But it was interesting to see some of these responses that were a little bit humorous. And then I noticed something. What was not on the list was work or money. Isn't that crazy? It didn't make the list. So we have to, in order to prioritize all these tasks and the things that come, what are those rubber balls? What are the glass balls? I think a first step is perhaps searching inward and discovering your strengths. What is it that you're just super, super passionate about? There's a free one, VIA Signature Strengths. You can find it at AuthenticHappiness.org, or VIA, V as in Victor, VIAcharacter.org. So both free, but they're reliable, valid instruments developed by Martin Seligman and his team, the father of positive psychology. There are other strengths finders and all kinds of tests to be able to say, hey, what is it that I'm really good at? And those people who are happiest in life, most successful, are those who have identified and then use their strengths regularly. They regularly use their strengths. Number 2, second point, is comparison is the thief of joy. It was like Theodore Roosevelt, I think, who said that. As soon as we start comparing, our glass balls, rubber balls, whatever, to others, and what are their priorities? Look at they're doing this, so I need to be doing this, or they're getting this award, or they're doing this program, so I feel like then I need to do this. And so not comparing ourselves to others, but saying, hey, what is it that really needs my priority right now? And in some cases, it might be a monkey. That there is an urgent situation. There's been, an accident with a 4-H'er, or something has happened, at one of the places that, yes, right now, this is my priority. I need to put this one out. I also think being able to think about and consider, I call it the 3 needs, right? The 3 needs that we're all born with. And we have a need for safety. That's emotional safety and physical safety, satisfaction, to do things that bring us joy, and then connection. We're all born with this longing for belonging, this craving for connection with other people. And you can say, you know what am I going to prioritize? What is it that brings me real joy, that real satisfaction, or what was it that will allow me to connect deeply with another person? who needs me? Maybe it's I need to send a text to somebody right now just to check in, or just a text of gratitude or appreciation for this person. And so, if they're thinking about their day-to-day priorities, what is it? Maybe some people like to make a list, finding a system that works for you that says, yeah, here are the absolute important things, deadlines I have to get done today. And then here are some things that are important, but not urgent, that I don't need to get done today. And it's going to differ every day. And there may be fires that come up and be like, oh, I've got to take care of this, and then jump back to this. But it's important to learn to be more than busy, if that makes sense. We could just be busy in extension and in 4-H and chasing all this and be busy, but not productive, if that makes sense. We can just do a lot of things that keep us busy. At the end of the day, feel like, man, what did I even do today? Well, I answered, right, 56 emails, and I did this and that, and made a phone call. I got on Instagram, for a half hour, and this kind of stuff that we can just frit away our time. So those are some ideas, some suggestions that may be helpful for some.
I have to jump in too. You talk about, we call that in Wyoming, we call what you just described fake work. And it's the work that we do that's kind of fake in many ways. So examples would be kind of the mundane day-to-day things that we have to do to keep our jobs. And I find myself in times of great mental anguish, or kind of that summer overwhelmed feeling, I launch into that fake work, because that's all that I can mentally handle, or my capacity is so full that it's easier for me to get into some of those. Balancing the office checkbooks is a great fake work job, where it makes me feel really full and complete and full of accomplishment, even though no one else appreciates that but me. And so I've noticed that is my pattern in work, is when at the height of summer, when I'm most overwhelmed and most annoyed with all the things, and I'm tired and cranky, and I haven't had enough hydrated water, and I'm still like, I'm going to choose to prioritize balancing the checkbooks in those moments, because that's what my brain needs me to do. I need to do all these other things, but here's one that is a complete start to finish, right? So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Megan. I think it's important. Here's a couple of thoughts that reminded me of. Find out where your most productive time of the day is. And for me, that's morning. Sometimes I'll just block out from 9 to 11, especially if it's a task I know that needs to get done. It's an important one. I can't stand doing it. Then I'll just block out and just knock that sucker out right first thing. Okay. And then scratch that off the list. There's actually a study that showed people who make lists and then scratching that off, it releases a little squirt of dopamine in the brain. It's like, woo. So celebrate that. And then, hey, okay, now on to the next one. And what else can I do? So we're celebrating these small wins where we're crossing things off of our to-do list, so to say. But yeah, I hear you, Megan. I get caught up in some of that of, okay, I really don't want to do this, so I'm going to distract I'm going to get this done or this done or this done, because I really don't want to do this or answer this email. I'm a good procrastinator. I'm a great procrastinator. So sometimes it is setting chunk of time. I'm going to work 30 minutes, and then I'll take a break. And you know what I will sometimes do? I try to do this almost every day when it's good weather, is that I will just hit a pause. When I hit the 2 o'clock wall, I don't know if you guys ever hit the 2 or 3 o'clock wall. I'm like, oh man, I'm so done. My brain's fried. I'll get up out of my chair and I will go walk up the hill. We have a little hill with about 121 steps that goes up this hill. And I will just walk up that hill and get some exercise and not take my phone, right? And just get out, breathe some air, refresh, and then I can come back. It's amazing how it just kind of resets the brain a little bit to be like, okay, now I can jump back in and be more productive, more focused with just a little fresh air, heart rate up, and jump back into a task.
I'm really glad you brought that up. Again, just having that reset. I think in 4-H, we have this positive youth development. We have our thriving model that's really been pushed forth, all about what is your spark, for kids, right? Like we focus on what's the spark for the kids and how can we develop that? What developmental context can we provide so that they thrive and become this long-term positive outcome? They become a fully functioning adult, can be an active contributor to society, and all these amazing outcomes. And I think as professionals, we got to think about ourselves as well. Like, how are we making sure that we are thriving and that we are just making things happen for ourselves, that we are able to avoid the burnout. We are able to refresh ourselves when we need to, and things like that. But I'm curious too, when we're talking about all these things for ourselves, how can we empower others to accomplish things? That might be volunteers, that might be the youth, that might be other employees that we supervise. How do we develop? Because sometimes the reason I'm saying this is that going back to the monkey article, Stephen R. Covey actually wrote a little section when they republished it, talking about managing gorillas, and how nowadays it's even more like, it's not just monkeys. Sometimes it's just these raging gorillas that absolutely need attention. And so I really thought that was a very interesting illustration of like, how do we make a team to accomplish things? Like, how do we really develop trust, or just empower others to be able to accomplish the big work that we have in front of us of developing youth?
Yeah, a great question. And we'll have sometimes those big gorillas, those things that are challenges. It could be physical challenges, emotional challenges. We are stressed, feeling overworked, and we'll have to learn at times to simply take a break and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'm not in a good place. And I think we feel sometimes hesitant, especially in our day, to feel like that looks like weakness or taking, time off. We have to invest. Our mental health is as important or more important than our physical health. If we're not feeling well, then we'll take a sick day. But if we're not feeling well up here, we're just not right, or I got brain fog, or I just need a mental break. I think that's okay. I think we have to let ourselves believe and understand that's okay. That's okay to feel overwhelmed, to take a break, to reset, to do something that will and that's going to be different for everyone. Now, I'm not talking about, procrastinating and feel like, oh, I don't want to do something, so I'm avoiding it. This is a little bit different when we just feel the pressure, that gorilla on our back. I think we can reach both out and up. We can reach outward to other people and say, hey, team, I've got this it's just been driving me crazy, this issue, this struggle, this problem, this situation, and I need your help. And when we can enlist others in wrestling that gorilla and say, what do you suggest? And turning outward for others, asking a parent, asking the youth even, if you're a 4-H'er, asking the youth, man, I've really been struggling with this. Maybe not to open up things maybe personally, but say, what would you suggest, to a person that is struggling with this or that? Asking for their input and their help, their advice, their counsel. I think that they would love that, for some direction. Can you point me in what's a great go-to, or what do you do when you're feeling a gorilla? And you can put it back on them, ask them for some ideas. I think also turning to great resources. We know more today than ever before about how to manage time and how to manage resources and how to mental health things. So great books, great resources, great websites and blogs, podcasts, right? That we can turn to, finding something that we can turn to instead of feeling like I have to take down this gorilla by myself. And that's actually one of the strongest predictors of how long and how well we'll live in this life. It's our relationships, it's our connections. It's even with the people at work. Yeah, studies have continued to show that those people who spend your time maybe at home with, and those people, those social relationships, those close relationships, time at work, they can help. They can be very, very helpful. And so I think, we talked earlier about searching inward, discovering, using your strengths, knowing the strengths of others on your team, and say, man, anyone who's really good with finances or budgets or something, because this one is driving me bonkers. So leaning on and relying on others with their gifts, their talents, their strengths, I think can be helpful as well. Sometimes, and I've talked about this in some of the happy hack stuff that I do. So some of your team has heard this, that we experience all emotions in the present moment. However, many of our emotions are anchored in either the past or in the future. If you remember me talking about this, some of these past emotions are things like frustration or anger or sadness or guilt or shame, or this kind of stuff is like, oh, I should have, we can actually be held hostage to the past, or how I handled the situation with a parent or a 4-H'er. We can sit there and dwell on it and dwell on it and dwell on it. It's in the past, but we're experiencing it right now. So that's an example. The other one, in the future, maybe we're experiencing, this is stress, this is fear, this is anxiety, these things that are coming up. I've got this project and it's feeling very overwhelming, and my chest is tight and I can't focus. That's all in the future. And now, it's not that we shouldn't experience those, but we should be mindfully aware of where we're at mentally and the emotions, that instead of just going with it and just going on autopilot. When we go on autopilot, we tend to go to the outside emotions, either the future or in the past, instead of the present emotions of joy, of happiness, of gratitude, of peace. Those are right now. So learning to be able to enjoy like the present moment of right now, and then trusting others. I think this is another big point. I just listened to a guy the other day, a great friend, Polynesian culture. So he's originally from Tonga. And he said this. He said, you know what? I never worry. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, I never worry. I just trust that people are good. They have good hearts. They're good people, and they have good intentions. And worry, he says, is really a useless emotion. He says that we can get caught up in stuff. It's not productive. It's, some stress can help us be productive, but especially what he says with things that I can't do anything about, or I have little control over or influence about. He says, I just learned to choose not to worry. And that may be oversimplistic for a lot of people. It's like, hey, don't worry, just choose not to worry, because we're ingrained in that habit. But I think that there are some things that we can learn to enjoy the present moment. And yeah, some of those things that are coming up, some of those really pressing tasks, we can think, is this really going to matter in 3 hours from now, 3 weeks from now, 3 years from now, what I'm worried and stressed about? Is it really that big, and important? Some things are, but we have to be able to take a step back. When we get stressed out, our perspective goes so narrow, we can't even see outside of the present stress. And what happens is that tends to spill over, and we get short with others and kind of lose our cool. We see it's hard to manage our temper, tongue, and our tone, those 3 T's, when we get stressed out and worried. So those are some ideas.
Thank you. And that's something I think is so, again, going back to the audience of 4-H professionals, we've got the gamut of people who've been in the career for years and people that are just joining in. And I think another thing about these exercises that we're talking about, it takes time to know yourself and where those feelings are coming from. And the time to take to do that is well worth it, and I feel in my conversations with other 4-H professionals that a lot of them just feel like, oh, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to think that or process that. But you're going to pay for it in other ways. Like we were just saying, the stress and the other negative effects that will happen and spill over to the rest of your life. And so I think if the pandemic has done anything of a silver lining, I would say that it has put a spotlight on the need for us to consider those things and how it affects our work and how we perform in all of our lives. Because like you said, things at work will affect our personal lives as well.
Yeah. The spillover is very real. And for me, it kind of caused me to slow down and just hit pause, and a reset through all the and then even coming back out of it as far as what's really important. And I've learned to say no to a lot of things that were hard for me. And I feel bad, but I just simply said, I wish I could do that. But if it's not like my top priority list of really, helping a person or a cause or a situation that I feel really passionate about, like use my strength, If it's a little bit outside my wheelhouse and say, you actually may benefit more from, hey, you could talk with this person instead, or they may have some ideas or suggestions, or to partner on a grant or a project. So we just have to learn how to do that, or we will get right back into that rat race and too many monkeys on us. And it doesn't feel good to be there.
One thing, I had a colleague and she talked about on her wall of her office, and I can't remember, but anyway, the university that she worked for had three kind of narrowed down goals. So it was service, learning, research, whatever those three things were. And it was a visual reminder for her to put all of her work had to fit in one of those categories, one of those three categories. And I thought it was a really fantastic system. Of course, the University of Wyoming has changed their goals and mission and visions several times over the past couple of years. So I can't whittle mine down into those anymore, but I used to. And I thought it was a really lovely thought, because I have a tendency to be overzealous too and want to do all the things. And, there's just not time enough in the day. And so when you give yourself, I hate to say this because administration could hear, but I use my goals from my goal statement and I actually only do things that fit within these goals that I set for myself, because I don't like to be overwhelmed anymore. I am getting older, I'm getting more grouchy and tired, and I want to, do other stuff. And so change your goals. And so whenever that happens for your university, whether it's in the fall or the spring or whenever, really, I think that's one really solid way of you're communicating to your administration. Here's what I want to do. And I post mine up on my wall, like my friend told me to, so that anytime I'm tempted to say, I'll sign on for that, I can look, and I have to mentally fit it into one of those goal statements, because I only give myself 3 goals a year. Otherwise, I'm not going to achieve anything. If I have 18 goals, I'll never get to there. So I thought that was an interesting discussion that you talk about, is what are those, how do we get out from underneath all the monkeys?
Well, I was going to jump in. It takes a lot of humility to recognize that others might have strengths as well that may be similar to yours that you may need to outsource, or ask for help and say, hey, I need your. And so I'm wondering and asking you, Dr. Dave, or just everyone here, how do you access that level of humility to reach out to others who may have strengths in areas that may be similar to yours or totally not in your wheelhouse? How do you develop that?
Yeah, that humility, you've touched on I think one of the key virtues. I actually did some study and research on humility, compassion, positivity, those as far as strong predictors of happy marriages. Just that willingness to accept influence, to pause and say that someone can do something, maybe it's better or in a better way. They have this strength, and to rely on them to reach out. It takes some humility. It takes some recognitions. I think that part of that is that searching inward and say, yeah, that they're wonderful and they're great people. And seeing them, I think, Alan, it starts with seeing others as people rather than objects in our own way, or a competition. And when we see people as people who have hopes and dreams and goals and fears and strengths, just as we do, then I think we have this ethical, this moral, right, elevation, this obligation that comes and says, hey, what do you think about this? I would love your perspective, or could you help me? Or you're really good at this and I'm struggling. And that can be tough to admit, I'm struggling, or I really need your assistance, especially if you're not a big fan of the person, right? You're like, man, they drive me nuts, or I don't want to do this. It can be hard, yeah, to humble ourselves and to reach out and to reach up.
Thank you. Absolutely. And I see that as well. And I know that for me personally, like I focus on outdoor education and reaching new 4-H audiences. if a volunteer approaches me and asks for an animal science lesson, I'm going to have to reach out to someone else or figure something out on my own, because that's not my strength. But I can rely on colleagues, but that is their strength. And when we were talking about empowerment of others earlier too, was even with youth, that's youth development. That's empowering some of your 4-H ambassadors who are high school kids to maybe do some social media campaigns, for your office. Like, that's honestly, marketing is something that we always need to be working on in 4-H. And that is something that you can empower the youth to do, or having volunteers teach some day camps. If you're short-staffed in your office, things like that as well. Again, the humility, and also you said reaching out, and it's a huge component of, and the beauty of that is that it's double youth development. If you involve the kids, so the older kids are learning from teaching the younger kids, or gaining those leadership skills. Yeah.
Sometimes I think we see humility as a weakness instead of a strength, and say that, I don't know, or I'm not sure, but wow, I know this person, or I would love to use your strength. I'm not the best at social media, and empowering others just strengthens the whole team. So I think, humility is one of those virtues, one of those characteristics, one of those strengths, really, that we can all work better at, for sure.
That's a great topic. I believe in extension as the wholesome family, and that's in all the various dynamics of everything. And so as we reflect the vulnerability of being humble and having that humility of just saying, okay, well, this is where I'm at, and having those conversations. For me, it's having small conversations that lead up to larger conversations, because then there's those foundations of that ability and that networking and those relationships. So even just checking in with your volunteers or colleagues, having small conversations. How was your weekend? Checking in with them. Even those conversations, I think we need as the connection. So going back to what you talked about, Dr. Dave, is those connections that continuously help us to be in the moment and having those conversations. And when you have those small conversations, those big conversations don't seem as scary, because there's that understanding and that respect between those individuals that can be built and move forward. And you're embracing something that you may have not had previously, but moving through them. That's the whole dynamic of everything. And an extension, we're so dynamic on topics that it's really hard to be a jack of all trades, because then you're spreading yourself so thin and you're not going into the depth of anything, thinking that you need to. But realistically, that's why we have specialists and other areas that really come to support us in an amazing dynamic to the mission of what we do. So it's a great conversation, and I appreciate it, definitely.
Yeah, thanks, Marcella. That reminds me of a concept that I love to teach and just share with others, whether it's teachers, whether it's parents, whether it's any kind of educators. And that is the connection, direction, correction kind of principle, as far as we can have a great influence. I think at the base of this little triangle is our personal well-being, making sure that we're in a good place. When we're in a good place, I think reaching out to make a connection before getting after somebody or teaching anybody anything. So, and I'm preaching to the choir. You guys know this, how important it is to connect. Finding that, building that relationship of trust. And some people, with youth, it's maybe humor, and being able to connect with them is vital, because the next step up is direction. So connection, and then giving direction or teaching a principle. If you're not connected and someone tries to teach you something and you can't stand that person, it's not going to go well, right? And then up at the top is the correction. Once in a while, in the 4-H especially, we're going to need to correct, and maybe, okay, hey guys, kind of getting out of line or getting a little rowdy, or hey, kind of get back, you're getting off task a little bit. So we'll always need to be doing these, but it really starts with that, having a connection. People will be open to our correction. Same thing in parenting. If they know that you love them, there's trust, there's commitment, there's that bond there. But we can't go the other way around, right? It has to go connection, then direction, then correction at the top.
Yeah, it's that old saying, they don't care how much you know until they know that you care. Kind of a similar, it seems.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our conversation has started from identifying tasks, how to prioritize them. There we go. And then looking at how we're also role modeling. So within of what we do is going back to what Alan said, is sometimes we ourselves or colleagues say, oh, we don't have time for that. But realistically, if we don't make time for ourselves, then our bodies are going to make time for it. So we either be proactive in our perspective or reactive and kind of see what the consequences are after, within our whole dynamic of everything. And I think that's the part of wherever we're at within our extension careers, is really focusing on, yes, we are in the people business, but also we are people. So we have to have those interactions, and having empathy for ourselves, because having that forgiveness, because we can try to be all, but we know we can't realistically. And it really goes back to our strengths and how we can pass that on in various aspects of what we do and how we continue to care. And I think that longevity and the trajectory of what we can do just becomes more strengthened and heightened for having that additional focus.
And I would encourage folks that are listening, and maybe they are early career listeners, and I would highly encourage them to try many, many different ways of taking care of themselves. I think one of the most frustrating things for me when back in those days when I was early is I wanted someone like Dr. Dave or Marcella to say, XYZ is how you take care of yourself. This is the way that you do that. And there's no prescription, there's no magic drug. It's all about you forcing yourself into it and finding it. So whether it's going for a walk or whether it's going for your 3:30 coffee or whatever that is for you, you have to try it, because you don't know that you don't like it until you try it. So always, 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 once a week, try to find one way that you take care of yourself in a new way. That is my 2 cents for that discussion. Try it out, because you may like it and you may not. And if not, you only did it once, so try it again. Try something else.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Megan, thanks for bringing that up. Can I just share a couple ideas that folks it may be helpful for them? One is, I call it text 2 before 10. If you've heard me talk, you've heard me share the importance of text 2 before 10. This is part of that turning outward, but it can make us happy as well when we're thinking of others. And it's simply sending a text message to 2 people before 10 a.m. And that I have found has been one of the most powerful, simple, takes less than a minute to send somebody a text message. Hey, thinking about you, or hope this goes well today, or hope you get feeling better. We need to do lunch soon. Reaching out to a former mentor, a teacher, professor, someone that has made a difference in your life. Simply sending them a text can be really powerful. I think also this concept of flow. And some listeners probably are familiar with the concept of flow. When we get into that groove, that's a good place to be in. It was Csikszentmihalyi who came up with that concept of flow, where we almost lose track of time. We're so immersed in a task. It can be at work. It can be on a project where we're using our creativity and all of this is coming together, or it can be at home, playing the piano, going on a hike. Maybe you talk about finding whatever that is, that area for them is. What is it that I love, that I can use my strengths in discovering something that I love to do and be engaged in? And that's that concept of flow. Others find it making a record, keeping a journal, gratitude journal, something that they can do to track. There's those, I use one called, I forgot the name of the app, where I'm able to take a picture of the day and I can use that picture. The 5-minute journal is what it's called. And it reminds me of the highlight of the day, something that's good, that's positive. And so kind of how we begin our day, starting your day in a positive way and kind of ending your day in a positive way, those 2 bookends, research shows are really, really important. We're not starting off on something really stressful or a worry list. Before we even get to work, we're already stressed out. Start your day in a positive way. It's exercise, it's reading, it's yoga or meditation or prayer, something that you can start your day in a positive way, and at the end of the day, doing something else that is relaxing. where you can, and maybe jotting just a little record of the best part of the day, what you're grateful for that day. So I call it keeping our eyes out for the good stuff. We'll always find what we're looking for. Well, if we, see problems and struggles in this child or this parent or this situation, you'll always see it. We'll always find what we're looking for. So if you're looking for the good, you'll find the good in any situation, in our country, and whatever it is. Look for the good. We'll always find what we're looking for. So hopefully some of those things can be helpful for those who are listening.
We have a wall of awesome in my office, and it is came to us through one of our professional development topics here in Wyoming, and it's just meant to just be the wall of awesome, and it's filled with all kinds of awesome things that we've accomplished as a good reminder as you make copies that we do some pretty cool stuff, and we need to celebrate that.
Oh, that is great. Megan, I'm gonna create, I have a blank wall over here. I just moved it into this new office. I'm gonna create a wall of awesome. That is such a great idea.
Yeah. All kinds. It's got artwork on it. It's got quotes from the kids at 4-H camp. And I think it's really easy. I've been pondering this a lot here recently. It's really easy for us to get tied down into some pretty silly stuff, especially for 4-H people. And I'll be honest, for me, the whole silly thing is fair, and trying to negotiate fitting policies and who can't help kids fit their critters to go into show ring is really hard for me. And that whole conversation's really hard for me because other circumstances that have happened in our 4-H program here recently too, where we had one of our young members committed suicide last week, and that whole emotional ball, and then go sit and have to discuss like how we're going to fit our critters seems like I'm not really here for this. This is not what my job is. I don't care about that at all. I am not here for this. And kind of remembering that that's not actually my job. Got other things on my wall of awesome that tell me what my job is. And I know what that is. You know what that is. It's working with kids. It's working with volunteers. And sometimes we have to do some of that really awful, like defining of a 4-H volunteer or a parent or guardian so that they can have a wristband to help fit a steer. That's part of our jobs, and I get that. But man, I hate those conversations. I hate those conversations.
Yeah, that's tough, Megan. I'm so sorry. It reminds me of a quote I have heard. It says, "People are more important than problems." And I think, or projects or profits or whatever else you can come up with. It's people. It's the relationships at work, relationships at home. I think for a lot of people, that's their priority is people. In fact, another exercise that I recommend to people is just coming up with your top 10 people who've influenced you, the top 10 experiences you've had who've made you, the top 10 things that you absolutely love and want to celebrate in your life that you're so grateful for, and even your top 10 places that you have maybe visited or you want to visit. But just that exercise alone of writing down what's your top 10 people, places, experiences, and things is a great exercise for us to slow down and realize, wow, what is all this really about?
Not to say that some people aren't really excited to litigate the importance of fitting, but it's just not, I think we forget that that's not actually what 4-H is here to do.
Yeah, that's right. I think sometimes and I've heard this, and maybe give or take a few percentage, but for most people in their jobs, you find something that you really like to do. I like about 80% of what I do. And I enjoy the presenting and the creativity and designing programs and being able to travel and meet people. I love that. That's about 80% of what I do. There's always about 2% that just, that bugs us, that is drudgery, or it's the reporting or the forms or the meetings, those dreaded meetings, those things. And we just have to realize that in order to really celebrate and enjoy the good, there's going to be some rivers, some sludges, some of those monkeys that, yeah, that they're inevitable, really, and we can't avoid them. We have to experience them. We have to maybe learn from them. Some of these we endure them, but know that, yeah, the sun is going to come out, and I'm going to be able to continue to do this. And I can really choose. We tell our kids, choose your tude, choose your attitude, right? No one can make you mad. We're going on, I don't want to go on this 2-hour drive, to go see this family member or whatever. And yeah, maybe you're not liking it, but you can still have control over your attitude, how you treat others, how you talk, your temper and your tongue and all that. So even in those things where we dread, we still have a choice of how we view it or how we treat others in that situation, even in that 20% that we don't like.
I love it. I think that is a great way to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much. It just that true reminder of where we're going and what we do and why we do it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, you guys.
This has been a 2022 production of the NAE 4-H YDP Western Region.
The West is the best. Please join us for our next episode.